To everybody listening, if you're a first timer, please like, subscribe, and share on the podcasting sites. If you're listening to us on, God willing, we hope one of the radio stations, we appreciate that. We're trying to get these interviews out, even though sometimes we have to do a little self-censorship and I don't even know how else to put it, but regardless, we'll move forward. I was on this man's show about a week or two ago, maybe ish. We talked about injuries with the shots, and we're going to get into that, and also some mandates, some issues about what happened at Disney during the 2020 crisis. This is Nick Catalano. He has a show on Rumble. It's Catalano and Rick's. Definitely check that out on Rumble. And also, if you can go to the website, it's goofyvaccine.com. Again, goofyvaccine.com on the internet. And then on Rumble, it is Catalano and Rick's. It's Caturano, correct?
It's you got to do the three fingers. Caturano.
Oh, hey, listen, I
Caturano
spelled it right, and that's all that counts. We want people to watch it.
Right.
So we'll kill it there. But Nick, thanks so much, and you've been a great friend so far, and I really enjoy our talks. And grateful we met, and grateful we're continuing our conversations as the days and weeks go on.
Yeah, Rob. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yeah, that's what struck me when we were put in touch with each other and just talking. You're just like average guy like me, like trying to figure things out. And I feel like we hit it off pretty good. And that's why I was like, oh, we got to get an interview with you because this is really good stuff. I really appreciated your honesty and your just willing to say whatever had to be said and not being guarded. But I am surprised you didn't do your big disclaimer here for
Oh
the
yeah.
I
We
was
haven't hit
looking
anything like that yet, so we'll have to
okay.
do that
I
when
was
it's time.
I was waiting for the disclaimer, but okay, I'll try to keep it. I'll try to keep the words correct.
No, it's
Uh,
fine. We will we will move into the conversation, and we will do the disclaimer before we start the interview. The CDC does recommend that the COVID-19 vaccine is safe and effective. And I got my COVID-19 shots, and my heart is pumping every day for my gratefulness to the government, to these companies, that I was made safe through the COVID-19 crisis because I got my COVID-19 vaccines. We will move forward
yeah,
with that. I try to say that stuff with a straight face. It gets hard at times, but we will move forward with this. Now, Nick, you were having issues in 2020. I shouldn't say that. I should say, well, you were, but with sickness, but also with your employer, who was a very big employer in Florida, one of the biggest employers, if not the biggest employer in the state of Florida. With that said, they did force vaccine mandates. For people that don't know and not listening in the Florida area, this is Walt Disney World forcing vaccine mandates on their workers. Nick and a few other people did speak out about this. So let's just start from the beginning, 2020. Let's start off with that, and also then talk about what Disney did to people like you that were not really interested in getting the shots.
I can get long-winded about all of it, and I don't even remember dates anymore. There's just so much water under the bridge. You try to go back, and the years have stretched. It feels like it's been a 10-year battle so far. But Disney, they let us all go. They closed down for the first time in history. They closed down for a while. People were panicked. People were living paycheck to paycheck. I was a union leader. I was at the top of my union, committee member, negotiated with Disney, stuff like that. We did a food bank to help people. So I was very involved with the community. I've always been involved directly in people's lives. We started out feeding like 200 people a week, and we moved on to feeding like a couple thousand a week. We had truckloads of food coming in, and I was really proud of the work I had done. During that time, we had press from all over the world showing up, and I was getting just once they started talking to me, press kind of gravitated towards me, and I started talking to a lot of press, and it came pretty naturally. I didn't realize what was going to become of that. I remember talking to my wife, going, I feel like God has something planned with this, but I don't think this is it. As we went through the summer of riots, as we went through COVID and a lot of things that didn't make sense, when I was doing my research, I put together protocols like quercetin, zinc, black seed oil, a lot of natural stuff. And all my friends that were getting COVID during that first wave, and even family members like in New Jersey where people were really dropping dead, they were reaching out to me. And my wife and I were sending care packages of nutraceuticals. And we didn't lose one person. Matter of fact, we didn't have anybody even end up in the hospital except one friend of mine who was already sick for some days by the time I got the package to her. And she got to the hospital, but fortunately she was okay. And I had a real test case with my friend's Latin family and her daughter, mom, and dad. Well, the daughter and mom were taking everything that we sent, and the dad was really stubborn. He was getting sicker and worse, and he finally goes, "All right, I'll do whatever you're doing because it's working." And he took it and it got better. And then they reached out and said, whatever you got, we want more of that. And that was just nutraceuticals. Vitamin D was a big one, and we were just kind of stacking up that stuff for people. So I knew there were things that were working, but nobody was talking about it. When the second wave came, which was the Delta variant, I guess that called it, and the vaccines were rolling out, I was not trusting. I never took the flu vaccine, the flu shot. I didn't see the need for it. As I looked at the data, it was always like on a good year, it was an 80% shot that you were going to, get the right shot that you needed because they're trying to guess what the next variation is. And coronavirus is an influenza that mutates. So we knew this from the beginning. And I didn't bring that up. What struck me, and this was the point that hit me, COVID is an influenza and it mutates. I don't see how a vaccine is going to be able to hit the target that's a moving target. You can hit today's whatever it is, but tomorrow you're not going to do it. And I turned out to be absolutely right. And people were telling me it's not the same thing. And it's like, no, it turned out to be the same thing. So for me, when I looked at the shot that was rolling out, I thought, hey, I'll just wait and see, and I saw a lot of value into living healthy and taking a lot of nutraceuticals, eating good, trying to exercise, which I don't do as much as I should. But I saw the value in that, in the fact that nobody was talking about those things. And I was seeing results of giving things to people. I was taking all the stuff and around people that had COVID and nothing was affecting me. And I was like, oh man, this is really not as, it doesn't need to be as scary as it's coming out to be. So Disney was one of the first companies that were going to issue the mandates. They are the first in a lot of things. They're leaders in the industry. I got the call. It was a Sunday. I was visiting family in St. Pete or Sarasota, I think I was in. I got the call on a Sunday. I walked into the garage, and for 40 minutes, I talked to my union leadership that was telling me that the mandates were coming, and they were trying to feel me out where I was going to stand because they knew I had a different mindset on things. I gave 40-minute discussion on why I thought it made no sense and all the reasons that the mandates, it should be a person's choice, and how it didn't look like it was working. But there was nothing I could do about it. It was like a runaway train. Well, my wife, it would turn out the next day, had COVID. And it came on her pretty fast. I had some pre-existing conditions. I was on the other side of the house trying to avoid it. 2 days later, my heart started racing. I didn't know if it was for the COVID or something else. 7 hours later, with my heart rate above 150, I ended up in the emergency room, waited there 7 hours, and then I had a full-blown COVID, aches, chills, high fever. They took the test. I had COVID. They finally got me into the ward. They gave me some fluids to stabilize my heart. Real nice doctor came in and said, hey, with your pre-existing conditions, you're going to be in trouble. Monitor your oxygen. They gave me an oxygen meter. We're going to monitor you. We're going to call you every day. When you go into crisis, you're going to come back and we're going to give you something called remdesivir. That's what they told me. And I had no idea what remdesivir was. And two, I didn't, there was that wave, right? COVID was really bad. And then the vaccinations came out and it was kind of like it had gone away and we thought we were getting back to normal. And I thought maybe there's something to these vaccines because it seems to be working. But that second wave hit and the mutation hit and everybody got COVID. But being in the hospital, my mom was a nurse for 32 years, ran ORs, ran clinics. I had family in medicine. I have never seen a situation where 103 fever, a full-blown influenza, And they basically said, take Tylenol. When you go into crisis, come back and we'll work on you then. That just didn't make any medical sense to me. So I went home and we were getting a lot worse. And I finally got a hold of my doctor at the time, and he recommended ivermectin. I had no idea what ivermectin. He said, look at the FLCCC website. I'm going to get prednisone, erythromycin, ivermectin. Long story short, we got the ivermectin that night. We got the other stuff the next day. 2 hours later, we were feeling great. My wife went from extreme crisis to her lungs opening up and she was relaxing. 2 days later, we were perfectly fine. It wasn't long after that, my 73-year-old mother with comorbidities, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, kidney disease, she got COVID, went to the hospital, and they told her there was nothing they could do for her. She couldn't breathe. They stabilized her with fluids. And I told my mom, make sure they give you prednisone and erythromycin. We were on vacation, dropped everybody off, ran up there. It was, 15 hours later, we're at my mom's house with the ivermectin. 2 days later, she was cooking for us. She was tired for a little bit, so those are the realities, that there were early treatments that were working, that were very cheap and very effective. But the fact that they were suppressing them and demonizing them, Joe Rogan took the ivermectin at the same month because I got sick and like 2 weeks later he did it, and there was a hit job on it. Then I realized, man, something's really wrong. And that's what led me to write my open letter trying to reason with people like, hey, guys, I understand everybody's scared. I didn't understand the intentions behind it, but I said, here are all the real world empirical data. Here are all the news articles with the links. Here's the stuff that's working, my experience and other people's experience. It doesn't need to be this scary, and there should be no mandate. And that's what got me into the fight, taking on Disney over the mandate, because it was irrational. And I attribute the irrationality to the fear that was being produced. And as I learned, it was a suppression of early treatments, along with bumping COVID numbers. Everything, you had a gunshot wound and had COVID and you died, that was considered COVID. And then they had the incentivized death protocols, where you were getting remdesivir. So people, as they got really sick, it wasn't like before you get a really bad flu, you just tough it out. You got COVID and you got a positive COVID test and you were toughing it out and there was nothing you could take for it at home. You were running to the hospital, and God knows the reasons why they kept some people and left some people out. They could make a lot of money on you. One, if they got a positive COVID test in the hospital, barbiturates, remdesivir, ventilator, and if you died after all those things, some hospitals, like in California, were getting up to $750,000 off the PrEP Act or the CARES Act money, and that fear, that's what created the fear. And I realized I had to take this head on, and that's what got me into the battle with Disney and just COVID, the whole pandemic in general.
Well, Nick, we have to interrupt you for the viewers that are watching. Ivermectin is not something that's approved for COVID-19. So if people are listening, please don't take it for COVID-19. I just have to say that, Nick, and interrupt you.
Thanks for your due diligence, Rob. Thanks for your due diligence and your input on that.
We're giving correct information to the viewers here and don't want any issues. We will continue on and speak about the Disney issue. So obviously you kind of gave your story about what happened with you. Moving on to what happened with Disney. So then obviously the shots came out. Disney put in that mandate, and just let's go from there of when you said, hey, listen, this sounds a little funky and I don't think I want to participate in this and I want to stand up against this.
I think, like everybody, I started deciding, what am I going to do? Should I just fake a vaccine card and go along with it? And I think I was just really praying about it and contemplating, because I had looked at all the research. I had looked at people like Pierre Corey spoke to the Senate about things that were working, not working. And I just watched the suppression and it really scared me what I saw, because it was so irrational and people's lives were at stake and people were dying as a result. So I realized I thought of Ephesians 5:11, have nothing to do with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. And I thought to do it, truth and love, with writing an open letter and trying to reason with them. And I realized I had to take a stand. So early on, I was by myself. I didn't know what I could do, but I wrote that open letter. I thought I was going to reach out to the press contacts, but it turned out to be a lot harder because they were all in the can for one narrative. all of a sudden I found friends that were willing to support us. There was a group that I had just met called County Citizens Defending Freedom. I was on a thread with them. I told them what I was doing. The founder reached out to me and said, "Hey, when you're ready, we'll help you. We'll back you out." And that's how I ended up with the website, goofyvaccine.com. That's how I ended up with a lot of press contacts that were open to listening to what I was saying. And that got me into the battle of just trying to reason with Disney. But what was interesting, as I was doing interviews, sometimes seven interviews a day, and I was interviewing across the world, like in Ireland and England, and then people in Disney were contacting me, reaching out, going, "Hey, my family heard you in Ireland, and they told me I needed to contact you because I don't want the shot, and I'm here at Walt Disney World." So it was really interesting. We started doing rallies. I had the first rally, we had like 50 people, but the newspapers said there was 30. It was always like, and then when we got to 400, they didn't even show any images of the people out there, So that's the game they were playing. They were always playing the game of, we're never going to let you see how many people are resisting the shot. And I can go into that later. But the first day we did it, all the cameras showed up and people ran out of their cars and were coming up and hugging me and saying, "I just want to thank you, but I can't be seen here." And they were scared and they were running off. But I was grateful for the 50 people that did stay. And it began to build a coalition of people willing to stand. And when I went to work, people were finding out I was standing. And the first one was a Haitian friend of mine who was a steward, got me in the storeroom. And she pulled me aside and said, "Hey, me and my family don't want to take this shot, but our church betrayed us. The union betrayed us. Disney's betrayed us. This doesn't make any sense," in her broken English, "and I don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, I'm trying to organize. I'm trying to organize a lawsuit." I go 10 more feet, somebody else tell me the same thing. I go somewhere else, somebody tell me the same thing. All these people, Rob, were in the same location, and they were all scared to talk to people. And they would tell me, "I'm scared to talk because I don't know who I could trust." So we're in the United States of America, and you can't even talk openly about how you feel about a medicine they're forcing upon you that has no long-term data. And that put the fire, the fire under my wings, and just
Just to
really
interrupt
realize.
quickly, Nick, because this is
Yeah.
prevalent to what you're speaking about. All those people that you were talking about that did not want to get that medicine, they were all from different areas of Disney, correct?
Well, it turned out that they would be from all different areas, but I'm talking specifically about, yeah, with the rallies, they were coming from all different areas, but
Correct.
my experience was in the location. But what happened
Okay.
was, as my email got out there and the website got out there, I was getting messages from California. I was getting studio workers, people that were in the studios. I was getting people from all over, even in high up in management and HR. People were leaking things to me anonymously. I had people reaching out from DC anonymously, sending me information, and the fear that
DC, as far as like people that were working in the government.
people that were working in the government that were scared for their
Okay.
lives, telling me what they were doing. And so it was pretty powerful stuff when you're seeing that people around the country are so scared over being forced to take a medicine that under the circumstances was proving to be faulty. And that was, I realized this was a big battle, man. It was a battle of good and evil. It was truth and freedom. It was tyranny versus what we were used to in freedom. And that's really what led me down a path that I didn't expect. And just, when I saw Rob, I literally, and I'll get emotional because for whatever reason, I'm my heart's opening up talking about it. But I had people reaching out in Canada, and they were destitute, man. They were losing everything, and they were scared to death of the shots because they were aware, they were paying attention to the right information. And yet this was happening all over the world. And I had friends of mine that are firefighters. I'm going to bring him on my show probably tomorrow, Sam. And they were firefighters, in Australia and all these different countries where they were being really, the pressure was on them, and none of it made any sense, because the more they pressured, the more the data was really clear. And it was just a collusion between big government, pharma, media, influencers, and what's interesting at Disney is we had the workers, all the workers, and even in the movie studios, we had all the people behind the scenes reaching out, and we were trying to organize. But you didn't have all the people that stepped out with voices. Recently, there was one who went viral because she spoke to some committee. When I reached out to these people that had influence and had public, they had a face, a recognizable face, and they were fighting the same battle we were. I said, join us. We could use the exposure is the word I'm looking for. And all of them were silent. Nobody joined us. Nobody helped us. So we were left on our own. And that's how they got us. They divided us rather than going, hey, we're all in this together. It was all about them. Look what they're doing to me individually. And they weren't going to get involved with anybody else or help anybody else. And that's what made the problem worse. But yeah, so I got involved with the mandates. We had a lawyer, we had a team, we had backing. At that time, we had Children's Health Defense behind the scenes helping out. And we were able to work with legislators in Florida to draft legislation to stop the mandates in the state of Florida. But then I realized there were leaving discrimination loopholes wide open in the state of Florida, and that I knew they would exploit them. And it turns out they did exploit them pretty viciously. There are a lot of religious exemptions, medical exemptions, just conscientious exemptions. And we have a lawsuit now that it's public. You just look it up, Walt Disney discrimination lawsuit. That's in the courts right now. We're working on that. And my thing taking on Disney has always been they're a multinational company. And if we can, put a kink in their armor and get justice and truth to prevail, we could send the message to the rest of the world that this can't happen again. And we need to rectify it, because the coercion, the collusion, the misinformation. I mean, there was no science involved. There was one instance where a young lady who was embarrassed. They were at our work after the mandates were stopped, but the discrimination continued. There was a point where the unvaccinated didn't have to wear a mask, but the vaccinated had to wear an N95 mask with a warning sign, goggles, shields. So you really stood out, right? So guests are like, why are you wearing all this? And they're not, well, I'm unvaccinated, so that was meant to send a message. One young lady was a story that really stuck out. She had the N95 mask with a warning on it. Well, Disney had these cloth pixie masks, which they let everybody wear prior, right?
Yes, I saw that.
And she was embarrassed. So she took the cloth pixie mask and put it over the N95 mask so nobody would see that warning sign and she wouldn't stand out as much.
Because
can I just add? So
sure.
Leaderships had taken things different ways at Disney. And what was interesting about this young lady who was covering up the N95 mask is that they were aggressive and told her if she didn't show her N95 mask. In other words, if you think the mask helps and you're wearing two of them, an N95 and a pixie mask over it, you would think, hey, she's doing the job. They told her no, she needed to show her N95 mask, or else there would be more PPE issued upon her. So that showed right there intent, coercion, and really it was coercion to get people to take the shots. And that's what I saw. People cave left and right as a result of all the coercion. So I just wanted to make that point.
I just, because when I was in the cultish mindset, I did see people, because the only thing I would do personally, where I live, I'm very close to Disney, about 8 miles away, maybe less. When I was going back to Disney, and I have an annual pass, when I was going back, I was only going on the Skyliner just to, because I was in the cultish mindset, scared to get close to people anyways. But I love going on the Skyliner. That's like my therapeutic place. Maybe people think that's mentally ill, but besides the point. Anyways, regardless, I would see people that were working there with the pixie dust mask. So just to verify with you, because I didn't know all this stuff. So because I only would really see people with the pixie dust mask. So you're saying if somebody was wearing the pixie dust mask, they had to be vaccinated. Is that what you're saying?
No. So in the beginning, when we came back, they issued the face shields and that cloth pixie dust mask for everybody. Sure. Right. As things started to unwind, then you could just wear the pixie mask, everybody. But then as we progressed forward, then it got to be that we could everybody had to wear it in public, but if you went to the backstage in the kitchen and stuff, we could take it off. The vaccinated could take it off, but the unvaccinated couldn't. Then it got to the point that the unvaccinated didn't have to wear anything at all. And then we had to remain with the N95 mask. They had to be fitted for people. They had to put this big hood on them and spray some solution to make sure that it was fitted right. I got pictures of it all. And yeah, it was like weird stuff. It was like a B
Yeah, I
movie,
didn't know any of that. All I would see,
Yeah.
obviously, as the guest, you don't see any of that stuff that you're speaking about.
And some people that were vaccinated were just scared, and they were wearing the mask, and they had the choice. Disney said you had a choice, but most of the unvaccinated stopped, but the vaccinated had to, and we were not allowed to take off that mask unless we were behind closed doors by ourselves, which never happens, right? So I was having breaks, my lunch break or wherever I was eating I was behind a storage shed out in the woods, like with the trees and stuff. I got pictures and videos of it because, and the funny thing is, all of a sudden, all the stewards and the cooks started seeing me out there, and it became a campground. They all started going like, "Well, so that was nice." But it's funny. But the crazy part is they created that we were like the vectors of disease. But what people weren't putting two to two together is that all the vaccinated people were getting and spreading COVID.
Right.
Our whole location, everybody got COVID. There were people next door ending up in the hospital with severe COVID with vaccines. They were already vaccinated, and that they were deathly sick. And so none of that made any sense. But still, it was like the emperor wears no clothes. You're unvaccinated, you got to wear the mask and the shield, and they don't. So it had nothing to do with science or common sense. But that's how they went about it.
See, I would see some people on the skyline with the mask for sure. This is when you're speaking about, we're talking to everybody listening. This is opening up 2021, even in 2020, I'm talking about that too, because I was there, because I was very in the cultish mindset, wearing 2 masks, going on the sideline by myself. It's sad. I mean, we can laugh at it now and look back, but it was very sad at the time because I couldn't breathe. But I would see the people with the face masks.
And Rob, what was crazy to me is you would see whole families, right? And they would take pictures by themselves, and they were forced to wear the mask and take these pictures with all their masks on. Well, these people are traveling together. They're in the same hotel room together, and yet they're out in the open in the hot, sunny tent, and everybody's got to wear the mask. You would think that they'd let them take the mask off for pictures.
Well, Nick,
for family.
That's what got to me. The last time I was wearing the mask until 2023. The last time I was in Disney, when I came back from where I'm at now up east, when I came back down to Florida for quite a few months and going back into Disney, I went in there with the mask on. Well, I walked, when I was outside, I didn't wear the mask. Then you'd go into, I'll just specifically pick Hollywood Studios. You go into Frozen or Beauty and the Beast. I mean, this stuff is, Beauty and Beast is specifically outside, so I wouldn't wear the mask. But going into Frozen, Toy Story, all, the Midway Mania.
Well, there was a time though that even the patrons had to wear the mask, and then they loosened it as things kind of unfolded. And I think a lot of times because there was so much resistance, so they had to go where people were.
Well, it got to the point with me. It's like 95 degrees out, and you're walking around with the mask. You look like a damn fool. And it's like, and you feel like you're about to die because it's, like I said, it's 95 degrees. It got to the point with me, who was very in that liberal hysteria, even though my eyes was opened, as we spoke about in the interview. It got to the point where it's like, listen, I can't do this anymore. I mean, this is insane. That we're walking around. Go ahead.
Well, it reminds me, it's amazing as you talk, you start remembering things. In my position, I'm in a fast-paced role. Sometimes you're working 10, 12 hours. And with an N95 mask and a shield, I was overheating so much. There were several times where I literally stopped breathing and I didn't understand what was going on. So if you ever had your body do something that you don't even know why it's doing it, and you're just like, what the heck is that? It was so hot in my mask and the hot air that my body was rejecting the hot air. And without consciously making this decision, I stopped breathing to avoid breathing in any more hot air. And that's when I realized, man, this can't be good for you. My own body is saying, stop it. You need fresh air. You can't be running like this. So I don't even think people are going to realize the collateral damage of mask wearing, so many masks and for so many hours. And epoxy, I think is the term, or whatever, lack of oxygen. I think there was a lot of damage just in that alone. And you see people in their cars, right? They got the mask on, they're by themselves and they're driving, and you're like,
I only
why?
did that one time, Nick.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I only
One
did it
time.
once, one time. I will say that I did it and be honest with the listeners and yourself. And I only did it one time. And then I looked around. I said, "This is freaking stupid. I'm not doing this." And
Well,
it was a one time deal for me, one and done. But yeah, I
well,
get it.
there's no harm, no foul in the sense that, hey, it's never too late to come to your senses, and
And
thank God for that. We all come at different points, and thank God for any opportunity. And it's not never too late now. So I'm really encouraged when I see people like you telling their story and where they came from, because most people assume it's like right-wing extremist or anti-vaxxers, and you're like, no, that wasn't me. I was a guy that was I'm a Bernie bro guy, and I believed everything and I went along with it, and I realized it doesn't make any sense, and I paid a price for it. I think that's a powerful voice for many people to help them bridge that gap and hopefully come across that bridge.
I do want to take a commercial break for people listening to us on one of the radio stations. Again, Nick Catalano here on Fire Breathing Roberts, Catalano and Rick's on I almost said YouTube, but Rumble. I don't think you would last on YouTube. No offense. But it is Catalano and Rick's on YouTube, and then goofyvaccine.com. Definitely check out the website. Nick, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in just a moment.
Sounds great.
So everybody, we are back here again, Catalano and Rick's on Rumble, and also the Goofy Vaccine, I should just say, on the internet. Definitely check out that website. Nick, let's kick this around. So just going back to Disney. So you had all these people that were speaking to you at your place in Disney of employment, and then obviously people all around the country and even the world that worked for Disney and even didn't work for Disney were trying to get in contact with you. So how did you really rally the troops together and start these lawsuits and start getting people more riled up and more, together as far as getting this set up?
I think the organization was from all the interviews, and people were going to the website and emailing me. Plus I was just talking to people. So
But this
more
was
and
just
more.
word of mouth, just people meeting you, or just you meeting someone and then someone.
Word of mouth. But surprisingly, the media that was covering me and interviewing me, conservative media, there were a lot more people in Disney watching that stuff that people didn't realize. So
Wow.
they were telling each other, "Hey, I just heard this guy. You got to listen to him." And people were reaching out. I would do shows, and I was really surprised by the people. I wouldn't have thought they were there, but there were a lot of people that were conservative leaning, or new people, because they became the messengers or the ambassadors. Maybe there's one conservative guy in a location and he saw the video, he goes back to everybody else that's doesn't want to take the shot, and he's like, hey, this guy, he's rallying the troops. And that's what began it. And I think early on when we did our first rally, all the media came out there, but it was interesting just how they portrayed it. Like I said, when we had large numbers, they wouldn't show it. We teamed up with the firefighters, the nurses, doctors, and the cast members. We had a massive rally. We got a video on the website of it, and they wouldn't even show those numbers. And when we would do the interviews, you'd think you do like a 10-minute segment, and they'd give you like a 10-second little clip where they kind of hid things. But just word of mouth, I think, is what really started working. And then there were groups of people that were trying to band together in secret social media groups. I won't give them off.
Sure.
And their parent, one guy, Stephen Cribb, he's in the lawsuit. For him, he had a large group, and he was organizing pretty good with other people that were trying to figure out how to write religious exemptions. And his parents saw the interview I did, or heard the interview. I can't remember the name. Bug Sexton and another guy. It's a real popular.
Buck Sexton, right?
It was. I got on the radio program. It was a lot of people heard it, and he reached out to me, and he had a large group of people that they were organized trying to do stuff. So that's how I was able to. I had different groups that I was infiltrating or being invited into. because I was out there on my own. And then people start like Stephen Cribb, like Emmy, who was with me on Laura Ingraham with Governor DeSantis. So I ended up getting some big platforms. You know, I was on Laura Ingraham with the governor, and then we didn't talk even vaccine. Then they didn't want to touch it at that point. They were dealing more with the woke stuff.
Was this more
But
young people that were reaching out and getting involved, or
no,
more?
no, no, man. I was really surprised. What was really surprising is I had a lot of people that were ready to retire because they didn't want
Wow.
to take the shot, but they didn't want to give up their job. So you had all ends of the spectrum. I had parents calling me, like from one, I'll never forget one lady from Portland who her daughter was here on a college program who wanted to make a career out of it, and she was
Right.
concerned for her daughter. You had people, I would have people from Ohio, Illinois, all over the country that never saw another employee. They worked from home. They were doing call center stuff. They said for years they never saw another employee or manager in person. They were forced to be taking the vaccine, and they lost their jobs as a result of it because they were like, I never see anybody, but they're forcing me to take the vaccine. So those were things that really made me realize this was not about health and safety, because if somebody was never saw another employee, why are you forcing them to take a vaccine that they're not comfortable with, and not offering them a conscientious medical or religious exemption? And that just kept fueling my fire to go, this is something else. This has nothing to do with health and safety of people. They are literally just trying to beat people and grind people into submission to what they want. And it's not even reasonable, because what they want, and again, this was a few years ago when I wrote that letter, you could hit all those links. I think even Jim Cramer on CNBC, who's a goofball, he even said it on CNBC, and I linked it, where he said, hey, it's not what we thought it was. It's clearly not working. And here we are. And yet after that, he starts pushing the vaccines again because his handlers get to him and go, hey, cut it out. But, you know, even his moment of honesty, and that's what frustrated me and kept me fighting.
So you were getting a few college program type of kids, but you were getting mostly people that were middle-aged or, you know, getting ready to retire. That was the most
No,
you
no,
were
no.
getting.
We were getting them all over the spectrum. I mean,
Oh,
young,
okay.
we were getting them all over the spectrum. And what was interesting too is when I had my friends in the Haitian community, all
Yeah.
of a sudden, all the stewards, people that couldn't communicate well, and they were all they were having their kids call me and organize and counsel them on the phone, on speakerphone, like what do we do? We don't want to get these shots, and some of them retired as a result of it. But what was interesting, and here's something pretty powerful, that the union, when I told the union out front, because I had relationships with them, even though I disagreed with them on a lot of things, I say, listen, I'm going to take on the mandates, and you're not going to want me as part of this committee as a union leader, because I'm just telling you what I'm going to do. I believe in people should have the right to choose what they associate. So I'm out front. Hey guys, you're against this. The union thought Disney had a right to do it, so they didn't fight for their employees. They didn't fight for their people. The union said, you guys don't even have a right to make a decision for yourself. And the union was there to fight for people. So when half the people are resisting taking a vaccine, they should, as a union, whether they agreed with it or not, they should have fought for those people. They laid down and said, no, the company has a right to do what they want. So when I told them that, they said, no, the exact words.
That's the
And this is
purpose of a union, but okay.
yeah. This is the honest response when I said, hey, you're not going to want me around as I fight. And they said, one person in particular said, no, we need your brain. Come on, we use you. Don't worry about it. So a couple of weeks later, when I was organizing all the Haitian community, the panic set in. Because the panic set in is that those people are paying all the dues. They're easier to control because they don't communicate well. So they send the ambassadors in, right? And I went to another Haitian person who spoke English well, and I just told him, I said, listen, just if you know people in the community, I have a lot of people now organizing that need help. I have a lawyer. We're organizing. I'm trying to help them as well as everybody else that's wanting not to take this shot. Well, I assumed it was him, because right away, as soon as I did that, I got the call from the union going, how are you organizing all the Haitian people? We just got word of it. Well, that person got a heart attack and died a couple of weeks later. Yeah, so go figure. And but that you know, and I can't say that for sure that it was him, but it was right after I talked to him and he looked at me and I realized, okay, he's not on the side of people making their own choices. He didn't take kind to me saying that. But he passed away as and God knows what happened, right? He was not that old. He was my age.
Wow.
Yeah. So what was interesting too is that the union, I heard, because they were losing they were whole in hotels, there were whole blocks of Haitian and Spanish workers that were resisting the shots, which meant they were going to lose all their money. And they were sending people in there to intimidate the whole block of them. And all of a sudden, everybody went quiet. And all the Haitian connections, all the people, they wanted to come with me on camera to speak. And imagine the optics of that, me taking on Disney with everybody, including the whole Haitian community, going, everybody betrayed us. The visuals of that and the reality of that. And then all of a sudden they went quiet. So they got to them. They threatened them. They made, I don't know what they did, but everybody went scared running as a result of that. And what was interesting is there was after the deadline, they said it was like 93% people that were vaccinated. Well, the CDC said it was 92 or 93%. Now I found that it was a lot more people because the union was panicking on the inside, and they released the numbers to me. Friends from the inside said there were still 10,000 unionized cast members that were resisting the shots, and there were easily 5,000 non-unionized cast members. So that was a big part of their money that was resisting the shots. So now they had a problem. They were helped losing the very revenues, right? So by doing that and not protecting their unionized workers, they were going to lose all that revenues that kept them going. So they went into a panic and they went into an arm twisting campaign. And that lined up with the Northeastern study. So 15,000 people resisting the shots at the time that there were 60,000 employees back in the state of Florida. That's a 25%. The Northeastern study, when the CDC said it was 93%, Northeastern study showed that it was 25% didn't get the vaccine. And then it lined up perfectly. I was like, that's the real number. So they were lying to us. And just like when we did our rallies and they had 5 people in a picture when there were 400 people, they were basically trying to scare everybody, going, if you step out of line, if you step out there, you're all alone and we're going to see you clearly, when really the numbers were bigger. So it's all been propaganda from the beginning. And they just keep disrupting and dividing us and using the fear to keep us from coming together and standing together. And that's happening now as people like myself trying to help people that have been injured, people in the vaccine in the protocol, hospital protocols and stuff. We're still getting divided because there's all these factions and people dividing us over splitting hairs or how we see it. And really, we should all be coming together and going, hey, we're fighting for right and wrong here, and what you did was wrong, and there needs to be accountability. And really, for those of you that have been injured, all that money, the taxpayer money that went to these pharmaceutical companies, that all should go to you guys directly, and also for research and to prevent this from happening again. And really, it should also be the media, the influencers, everybody that had a hand in, pulling the wool over your guys' eyes so that you could see the real dangers and have informed consent, at least going into these things. They should be paying up. And as long as I'm alive, Lord willing, I'm going to keep fighting until that pay up happens. And there's acknowledgement that the prevalence of how many injuries are out there, and there is justice that people are paying, because so many people are like yourselves. I mean, it's a financial burden where you guys were self-sufficient, and they put this burden on you guys, not just health-wise and not just the not knowing what tomorrow brings. You don't even have the money to do the things you need to do to try to fight for your health. And they did this. They're responsible. They should be paying up. And it's really frustrating that at this point where it's so obvious, when you have Justin Bieber and LeBron James' son, and so Jamie Foxx and Bieber's wife, all these people that are being affected, and maybe it's not all vaccine injury, but it's too many of them to say it's not. Why aren't
A
they
lot of
speaking out?
athletes in Europe too, soccer players that are in
Yeah,
tremendous shape. This is women and men
yeah.
dropping like flyers on the field.
Why
You know,
why
and
aren't these people of influence sticking up and standing up and shining a light on what's happening? And that's a real crime. You know, God's going to hold them accountable. And I don't think I think they're all doing themselves damage because they're exposing themselves for the shrills they are, and they're doing it for self-preservation, money, influence, whatever it is, because they're not doing it for the right thing. Because if you harmed my kid, there would be nothing to stop me. I mean, there's nothing to stop me now based on right or wrong. So I'm just really, it's frustrating, Rob, to watch, and it's frustrating as I get to know great people like you, and when we get to talk off camera and feel the struggles and the challenges, and this is happening in our society, and people are not responding appropriately, and then the gaslighters that are still in denial. And fighting against it, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. This should not be.
well, and we're all grateful of what you did at Disney and standing up. It's very tough to speak about because I'll tell you what, you are 100% correct on everything you just stated. My thing is, I am grateful that there is a lot of people that have woken up, that are seeing, they're seeing what's going on in general. They, have come out of the cult atmosphere, and we just hope more people do that. Whether you're for or against it, it's all about putting a critical thinking cap on and put
Yeah.
two and two together and equal four. We can all look at both sides. In the media, the powers that be, they don't want us to come together as a country, as a world. They want us to fight about issues that I wouldn't say they're nonsensical, but they're not as important, excuse me, as freedom. We talk about abortion, the trans stuff. Again, I think these are important issues, and I think these need to be spoken about more, and we need to figure these out for sure. But when it comes to health, when it comes to putting something in your body that maybe you don't know fully what's in it, you have to kind of, dig deep and say, hey, maybe some people want to do this, and they dug deep into the information and they say, hey, I think this is good for me. God bless them. More power to them. And then some
But
people,
and
yeah,
Rob, I think it's informed consent, because the
right.
problem, it's always been, the next level of the argument is, hey, people should have a choice whether they take it or not. And then if you go a little bit further back, but I said, but it's got to be real informed consent, because if they really understood what they were taking, and all the safety measures that were overlooked or run over, nobody.
God,
Yeah, yeah.
we'll have to
So,
edit around that. But
yeah, I think it's informed consent, and I would just, and I gotta say something, because
oh boy.
you got the same intuition when people say that. But yeah, when it comes to stuff like you mentioned, the trans issue or the abortion issue, the thing,
Those are health issues also, just to be fair.
well, I think for me, when I grew up in a lot of communities, I ran nightclubs. I
Oh,
was,
wow.
I was out in the world. I was in New York City,
Hmm.
very progressive, and I was, I have a lot of friends in a lot of demographics, right? And I've known
Sure.
people over the years. So
Especially at Disney too. You're going to meet a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and
and I
thought processes.
I'm somebody who values relationships, and I value relationships with people that are way different than me, that live differently, because that's how I learn. Um, and and at the same time, I want what's best for people. But the real challenge for me comes is when you come after kids, when you confuse kids, when you're mutilating kids. Kids can't drink, can't smoke, but sure, they could change their genders at an early age. I think all those things are part of grinding us down. And what they're doing is they're keeping us fighting in so many different directions, where we can't unify and fight on things that need to be dealt with, which is basically the freedoms, the choice. But equally as important is goodness, because goodness would not allow these things to happen. Goodness would not
Yeah.
allow you to have lack of informed consent to take something that was harmful. truth and goodness are important, and those things contradict those things. So that's why those issues are important to me. But
yeah, I know we're running out of time. I want to end with this last point. So just going back, obviously Disney did get rid of the mandates eventually. The lawsuit issues with Disney are still going on as far as, and you can correct me if I'm incorrect on that. If they are still going on, like I think they are, can you state to the audience what is going on with that and the progression of those lawsuits?
sure. So the mandates were over, but they left the discrimination wide open. So people were, because of their religious exemptions or their convictions, having to wear a mask, stand out. We're kind of like the perpetual. I hate to make the analogy, but like they stood out, right? So you knew it was meant to shame you, mock you, embarrass you, coerce you. So those things were still going on. And that's what the lawsuit is about, because people lost their jobs over it, for standing their ground. And after the mandates ended, Disney
So just to correct the record here, so the people that retired or they lost their jobs, if the retired people wanted to come back, if the people that lost their
no,
jobs,
they never nobody
they
ever
never
got.
regained employment if they wanted.
No, they never,
Oh,
when
wow.
I was interviewed on live TV at Fox the day after the signing of the special legislation to end the mandates, and I called for Disney because it was right before Christmas. And I said, please retroactively bring these people back. It was only a matter of days. And no, and I have friends of mine that retired after many years because they didn't want to shop, but they didn't want to lose all their benefits and everything. And they're mad as heck. And they've been reaching out to me. So yeah, nobody ever got their jobs back. But that brings up another issue, and I don't want to delve too far in it. The help always comes late. When the Supreme Court had to deal with the OSHA mandates and the CMS, the date was like, I don't remember what it was, January 3rd or something like that. They could have done a stay and said, hey, everybody freeze everything till we issue our guidance on this. They waited a few extra days. So people caved, people lost their jobs. Then they shot down the OSHA, Biden's OSHA mandate, but all those people never got their jobs back. And the people that were forced to take their shots because of benefits or what have you, they never get to take those shots out of their body. So the help always comes late. And I saw that in Florida. I saw that at the high levels. And that's what's frustrating to me, is that even when people want to side with us or they're going to do something to help, it always comes late. And that makes me very suspicious of intent, because they keep getting people to fall.
Yeah. And anyways, Nick, yeah, go ahead.
And the lawsuit, yeah, I can't speak too much on the lawsuit at where it is right now. There are some things happening right now in the background.
Okay.
It was difficult because of the funding didn't come in to take on such a big organization, but our lawyers have hung in there. So it's progressing. I'll say that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and there was a settlement and an NDA that I heard about, that was done. I'm sure there's several of them, so that's a big deal.
All right. We'll end it there. Nick, I hope you can come on again. Again, goofyvaccine.com, Caturano and Rick's on Rumble. Definitely check out the program. A lot of good interviews about a lot of these great topics and information in general that's been going on for the past 3 years. Nick, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate your time, and thanks for always being such a good friend. And I hope to speak to you again sometime very soon.
And Rob, thanks for having me on, and thank you for being so brave. And yeah, I appreciate our friendship, and we'll keep swinging at this and try to get the justice that it deserves. Thanks, man.
I got my COVID-19 vaccination, and here's why. This isn't about gimmicks or sentiment or what commercial I like. This is about facts. COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective. Millions of doses have already been given in the United States, and these vaccines have the most intensive safety monitoring in U.S. history. People from different races, ages, genders, and ethnicities participated in large clinical trials around the world to make sure this vaccine worked for all kinds of people. The amount of time and effort dedicated to developing these vaccines was huge. Scientists used existing research and technology so they could get the vaccines developed quickly and safely without skipping any steps. If you need any more information, use a reliable source like the CDC website to get the facts.
I'm getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Yes, there could be some short-term side effects from the vaccine, but they go away in a day or two. Those are signs that my body's building protection. It's worth it to avoid serious problems from COVID-19 disease.